Hello, welcome back to the Olden Shot. Today's video will not be featuring photographs that I've taken. I got a phone call from my sister asking if I'd be interested in some old family photos that she'd found. And yes, of course I'd be interested in photographs. And I went to visit my sister and she had an awful lot of photographs of parents, grandparents, and further back than that. And I decided it would be interesting to scan them and see if I could put the photos to names in the family. And it was quite interesting. The whole process was I used the flatbed scanner and scanned these photographs, and where possible I tried to improve them because some of them were a bit battered. One thing was immediately apparent was my mother and father came from different backgrounds. My mother was firmly rooted in the middle class, come from a long line of accountants. My father, working class background, came from a long line of coal miners and shipyard workers, and that was apparent in the photographs. For example, my maternal grandmother, I found at least 5 different studio photographs taken of her, all dressed up to the nines, and there weren't so many photographs on my dad's side. Mainly family photographs taken with a box brownie or equivalent. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at some of the photographs and discuss some of the detective work I did. But one thing I will say to you is, if you're interested in family history, speak to the members of your family, see what photographs they have, and ask if you can borrow them to scan. And with the previous generations, if they're still about, ask them questions, see if they can put names to the photographs that you don't recognise the people on. It's great stuff, and family knowledge is by its nature a diminishing asset, so use it while you can. Anyway, we're going to have a look at some photographs now. This is probably the earliest photograph of my maternal grandmother, Doris Maria Robson Lister. I would guess that she's around about 12, 13 in this photograph. She was born in 1898, so this would have been around about 1910, 1911. To put in perspective, that's around about the time that the Titanic sank. This photograph of my grandmother, I think she's probably in her mid to late teens, and it's a lovely photograph, and it's a lovely dress she's wearing. On the back of this photograph was a message to Edwin, with love from Doris, 1921. Edwin was her brother, and 1921 I assume was the date that the photograph was taken. 2 or 3 years later she was married and had a son, and my mother came in 1926. This photograph, probably late 20s or early 30s, that is 1920s, 1930s. The expression on my grandmother's face sums up what I remember of her. She was a very loving and kindly grandmother, and you can see in her face those attributes. This final studio portrait, I'm guessing, would have been late 30s, possibly just before the start of the war. And not long after this, my grandfather died. He was a lot older than my grandmother, and she was a lovely woman. Now we come to a bit of detective work. This was in the group of photographs, and I recognise my grandmother standing between the two men, so that has to be my great grandmother Lister on the left, and my grandmother towards the right, with her two brothers, one older, one younger. There was another daughter, but as my great-grandfather Lister had died young, I think great-grandmother Lister felt she couldn't manage, and Victoria, went to an orphanage. She would be reunited with the family later, but that's why she's missing from this photograph. When I first saw this photograph, I didn't know who it was, and I'd taken it out of the bunch of photographs that I got from my sister, and I compared this with the earlier photo of the Lister family, and I come to the conclusion that that's a younger photograph of my great-grandmother, and that little bit of detective work has now meant I have a face to put with a name. There are no formal studio photographs of my paternal grandparents, but this is really the only formal type of photograph I have of them. That's my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandmother wasn't a very tall woman, as you can see. When I was a kid, I thought my grandfather was a giant, but I think probably he's about the same height that I am. He worked in the shipyards in Wallsend until he had an accident. He fell inside a ship and broke his back, and was forced into retirement because he could no longer walk easily. He was a tough man though, very tough man. I had a bit of a surprise when I was looking through the photographs at my sister's, because this popped out. I hadn't seen it before, but if you can imagine without the hair and a beard, then there he is. The young'un, not the old'un, the young'un. But it wouldn't melt. So that's it, where we finished looking at my family history, and it was great to go through these photographs and compare some of the photographs with the family tree, and it's a fun thing to do. I do recommend you have a go yourself. Get in touch with your relatives, find out what photographs they've got, and it might fill some gaps in your life. So that's it for now. We'll be back again soon with photographs that I have taken. So until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.